A new front is opening in Europe's energy war. This time, not with drones or missiles, but with soldiers guarding pipelines. Hungary says it is deploying military forces to protect key energy infrastructure from what it calls a potential Ukrainian threat. Prime Minister Viktor Orban is accusing Kyiv of blocking oil flows and escalating political pressure ahead of elections. At the center of it all, the Druzhba pipeline, Russian crude, and a deepening rift inside the European Union. Hungary is moving troops, not to a battlefield, but to its energy facilities. Prime Minister Viktor Orban announced that soldiers and equipment will be deployed to protect critical infrastructure. He says the move follows what he described as a Ukrainian oil blockade. Since January 27, according to Orban, no oil has been arriving in Hungary through the Druzhba pipeline. The decision came after he convened a National Defense Council meeting. The dispute centers on the Druzhba pipeline, one of Europe's longest and most critical oil routes. It carries Russian crude to Hungary and Slovakia. But flows were disrupted after Russian strikes damaged Ukraine's energy infrastructure in late January. Budapest and Bratislava argue that Ukraine has halted transit for political reasons. Kyiv has not accepted that framing. A day before announcing troop deployments, Orban addressed Hungary's parliament. He declared, "We will not yield to blackmail." He accused Brussels and Ukraine of interfering in Hungary's domestic politics ahead of April elections. The oil dispute, he suggested, is part of a broader pressure campaign. The rhetoric marks a sharp escalation. Hungary is not stopping at troop deployments. Orban also announced a drone flight ban near the Ukrainian border. The move signals security concerns extending beyond pipelines and pumping stations. Budapest says it expects further disruptions. The government is preparing for what it calls potential Ukrainian actions affecting its energy system. The standoff underscores widening fractures inside the European Union. Hungary has repeatedly clashed with Brussels over its approach to Russia and Ukraine. Now, energy transit has become the latest flashpoint. The war in Ukraine is no longer confined to the front lines. It is playing out through pipelines, power grids, and political speeches.
I must also inform the Parliament that, in a manner unprecedented in the history of our country, our eastern neighbor Ukraine, which is currently at war, has been blocking oil deliveries via the friendship pipeline since January 27th. I wish to inform this esteemed House that the government has thoroughly examined the current situation and has concluded that there are no technical obstacles whatsoever to the resumption of deliveries. It is entirely up to Ukraine's discretion whether they decide to restart the operation of the pipeline or not. It is becoming increasingly and undeniably clear that what we are witnessing here is nothing less than blatant political blackmail. It's well known that diplomatic ties between Hungary and Ukraine have hit rock bottom. The Ukrainians demand that Hungary break away from Russian energy, provide money for Ukraine, and support Ukraine's European Union membership. Moreover, the Ukrainians are now openly threatening the Hungarian government and its leaders personally. I wish to inform this esteemed House that the national government will not yield to any form of blackmail. The national government will not, under the influence of any threat, deviate from its program and will act in full accordance with its constitutional oath. It acts exclusively in the best interests of the Hungarian people, and will not yield to the demands of any foreign power. We insist on our independence and sovereignty, and we also insist on our rights. What Ukraine is currently doing constitutes a blatant breach of the agreement. We cannot accept this, and we firmly insist upon our rights. Honorable members of the House, Mr. President, Brussels' conduct in this matter is, at the very least, ambiguous. Article 222 of the Treaty on the European Union explicitly makes it the European Union's solemn duty to promptly come to the assistance of any member state that has suffered a violation of its interests or significant harm from a third party. It would be Brussels' clear obligation to stand with Hungary, but it is not doing so. The facts clearly demonstrate that Brussels has chosen to side with Ukraine, a nation outside the European Union, rather than with its own member state, Hungary. Honorable House, it is well known that Hungary and Brussels hold opposing views on the war, on the funding of Ukraine, and on Ukraine's European Union membership. Nevertheless, in the current situation, Brussels must represent Hungary's interests. The fact that it does not do so constitutes a grave violation of the agreement to the severe detriment of Hungary. In light of these facts, Mr. President, I must unequivocally state that Brussels has entered into an alliance with the Ukrainians. Brussels and Kyiv are in agreement that as long as a national government remains at the helm of Hungary, they will be unable to execute their plans. They are incapable of severing our ties to Russian energy supplies. We do not support Ukraine's accession to the European Union. We will not pay Ukraine, and we say no to the war. Honorable House, all of this is taking place just 50 days before the upcoming election, and therefore this action constitutes a clear and open interference in the Hungarian elections. I have every reason to assume that its explicit purpose is to deliberately alter the balance of power in line with the specific intentions of both Brussels and Kyiv. But I want to remind everyone that in Hungary, on this issue, the Hungarian people will decide. Whoever says that utility bill cuts are sustainable without Russian energy is either a fool or is lying. Esteemed House, the government has also decided on countermeasures. In coordination with Slovakia, we have halted diesel shipments destined for Ukraine. Furthermore, the government has vetoed the disbursement of 90 billion euros previously awarded to Ukraine, which did not burden us and was decided without Hungary's participation. The Hungarian government has made the decision to veto this very day in Brussels the 20th war sanctions package, which is currently awaiting its final adoption. Today in Brussels, we have officially announced that as long as Ukraine does not permit the transit of Russian crude oil to Hungary, we will actively obstruct every single Brussels decision that aims to support Ukraine. The Commission has presented its strategic plan to the Prime Ministers, indicating that while the Russians are currently able to withstand the pressures of the war, they will not be able to sustain this for an extended period. The Commission states that they will experience significant economic instability and will consequently be forced to agree to a peace settlement that is advantageous for both Ukraine and the European Union. According to Brussels, as they openly declare, the war must therefore be continued because the war can be won this way and a favorable peace can only be achieved in this manner. Honorable House, it is the firm conviction of the Hungarian government that this war strategy is wrong. To our knowledge, there are no facts whatsoever to support the Brussels war strategy. Our assessment is that Russia will still be capable of operating its war economy and its military apparatus for many years to come. We believe that Ukraine and Europe will exhaust their military stockpile sooner, deplete their financial resources sooner, and run out of available manpower reserves much faster than Russia. Furthermore, Russia possesses nuclear military capabilities, and there is simply no answer to the question of how a nuclear power can truly be defeated. Distinguished members of Parliament, Europe cannot sustain this war financially. It will be utterly ruined by it, and will find itself deeply indebted for decades to come.